The champagne glass slipped from Seren Aldane's fingers and shattered against the marble floor the exact moment her fiancé announced his engagement to another woman. The sound was swallowed by the collective gasp, but Seren felt it in her bones. That crystalline destruction, sharp and final. Champagne pooled around her silk slippers, soaking through delicate fabric her mother had spent 3 months embroidering. The ballroom fell silent. 300 guests turned as one, faces a blur of feigned shock and barely concealed delight. Seren stood frozen at the edge of the dance floor, her burgundy gown suddenly feeling like a shroud. The chandelier seemed too bright, the music too loud before it stumbled to a halt. Aldous Vernier, the man she'd loved for 3 years, the man who'd proposed beneath the willow tree in her family's garden, the man who'd promised her forever just 6 weeks ago and meant absolutely none of it, stood at the center of the room, with Venetia Ashford draped on his arm like a jeweled serpent. Venetia's smile was radiant, triumphant. Her diamond necklace alone was worth more than everything Seren's family had ever owned, and she wore it like a declaration of war. "I know this comes as a surprise," Aldous was saying, his voice carrying that smooth, practiced charm she'd once found so captivating. But when love strikes, one must follow one's heart. Love. He dared speak of love, while Seren stood 20 feet away, wearing the dress she'd saved for months to afford, the dress she'd meant to wear when they announced their own engagement tonight. Because that had been the plan. Their plan, discussed just this morning over breakfast, sealed with a kiss that now burned like poison on her lips. He hadn't been lying about that part. Tonight had changed everything, just not in any way she could have imagined in her worst nightmares. Whispers erupted around her like flames catching dry kindling. She caught fragments. Abandoned. Humiliated. Did you see her face? Always knew she wasn't enough. The Aldane girl, imagine. Each word a knife, sliding between her ribs with surgical precision. "Move," her mind screamed. "Walk away. Don't let them see you break." But her legs wouldn't obey. She was drowning in plain sight, surrounded by sharks in silk and satin who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. The Aldane family had once been wealthy, respected, powerful. Her grandfather had dined with nobility. Her father had owned ships that crossed oceans. Now they clung to the edges of society by their fingernails, and everyone knew it. Everyone, including Aldous, who'd apparently decided Venetia Ashford's fortune was worth more than 3 years of whispered promises and stolen kisses. "Seren," a voice cut through the fog. Low, controlled, utterly unfamiliar. She turned, grateful for any interruption. A man stood beside her, tall, dark-haired, with a face that seemed hewn from winter itself. His pale, piercing eyes assessed her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He wore black evening clothes that fit him like armor, and something about his posture suggested he commanded rooms simply by existing in them. "I don't believe we've met," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "We haven't." He didn't offer his name. Instead, he extended his hand. Elegant fingers, a signet ring she didn't recognize, absolute certainty in the gesture. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question. "I don't. You have 2 choices." His voice dropped lower, meant only for her. "Stand here while they watch you crumble, or dance with me and let them wonder." The music had resumed, a waltz, achingly beautiful. Couples took the floor, shooting glances their way. Seren looked at the stranger's outstretched hand, elegant, powerful, completely foreign to her world. Then she took it. His grip was firm as he led her onto the dance floor, positioning them directly in Aldous' line of sight, with what seemed like deliberate precision. His hand settled at her waist with proprietary confidence, warm through the silk of her gown. "Chin up," he murmured as they began to move. "Smile like you planned this. Like he's the fool, not you. I don't know who you are. Castian Valthor, Duke of Ashenmore. Her steps faltered. A duke. She was dancing with a duke while her entire life collapsed around her. The Duke of Ashenmore. She'd heard the name whispered at parties, always accompanied by words like reclusive and powerful and dangerous. Why? She breathed. Why help me? His cool gray eyes held hers, revealing nothing of his thoughts. Because you looked like you needed a villain more than a victim. That doesn't answer my question. A hint of amusement crossed his features, a crack in the ice so brief she might have imagined it. No, he agreed. It doesn't. The waltz ended. The final notes hung in the air like a question. But instead of releasing her, the Duke leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing her ear, his breath warm against her skin. Meet me in the East Garden in 10 minutes. I have a proposition for you. Before she could respond, he stepped back, bowed with formal precision, and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Seren alone on the dance floor, with 300 pairs of eyes watching, and absolutely no idea what had just happened. The East Garden was dark and cold. Seren wrapped her arms around herself and questioned every decision that had brought her here. She should be home by now. Instead, she was skulking through a strange garden to meet a stranger who'd offered nothing but cryptic words. Niall. The thought of him made her chest ache. He'd gotten himself tangled with moneylenders again, dangerous ones this time. That was half the reason she'd agreed to let Aldous announce their engagement tonight. His family's connections could have helped extract Neil before the situation turned deadly. Now that hope was ash, along with everything else. You came. She spun, heart lurching. Castian Valthor emerged from the shadows near a marble fountain, his dark figure blending with the night. Only his silver-gray eyes caught the moonlight, gleaming like a predator's in the darkness. Against my better judgment, she said, pleased that her voice didn't shake. Your better judgment led you to Aldous Vernier. Perhaps it's time to try a different approach. The words stung because they were true. What do you want, Your Grace? He moved closer, hands clasped behind his back, studying her with that unnerving intensity that seemed to strip away pretense. I watched you in there, the moment he announced his betrayal. Do you know what I saw? A woman being publicly destroyed? No. He stopped an arm's length away. I saw a woman who didn't collapse, who refused to give them the satisfaction of watching her fall. Seren's throat tightened. I was too shocked to move. Perhaps. Or perhaps you're stronger than you realize. He paused. I have need of someone strong. For what? Marriage. The word hung between them like smoke, impossible and absurd. You're proposing to me? Her voice came out strangled, pitched higher than she intended. You don't know me. We've spoken for perhaps 5 minutes total. This is madness. I know enough. His voice remained clinical. You're from a declining family. Your debts are considerable. 12,000 sovereigns. Your brother Niall has fallen in with Gregor Thane's moneylenders, which means he's approximately 3 weeks from having his legs broken. After tonight, your marriage prospects are ruined. Each fact landed like a blow. How did he know about Niall? Why do you know these things? Because I make it my business to know everything useful. He assessed her. And you might prove very useful. What purpose? I need a wife. You need salvation. This can be mutually beneficial. You could have any woman in that ballroom. Why me? Because they want something from me. Power, prestige, access. You want only escape. That makes you valuable. What's stopping you from simply not marrying? My grandmother. She's arranged a match with Rowena Blackmere. Unless I present an alternative soon, I'll be bound to a woman whose family's interests conflict with my own. Seren laughed bitterly. So I'm your emergency exit. Yes, and I'm yours. The question is whether you're practical enough to accept. If I refuse, then you return to your crumbling townhouse, your mounting debts, Your ruined reputation. Your brother faces Gregor Thane's men alone. Your parents sink deeper into despair. Her hands clenched. You're cruel. I'm honest. There's a difference. He stepped closer. I'm offering you a way out. Title, security, protection. Resources to save your brother. In exchange, you play my wife and keep Rowena at bay. For how long? His demeanor altered subtly, too quickly for her to read. There and gone like lightning behind clouds. That remains to be seen. The night pressed in around them. Inside the ballroom, music played on. A world that had just expelled her, celebrating without missing a beat. I need time to think. You have until midnight. He pressed a card into her hand, thick paper embossed with wolves and thorns. My carriage will be at the north gate. If you're not there by 12, we'll never speak of this again. He walked past her, then paused. Whatever you decide. Don't mistake my coldness for indifference. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with an impossible choice, and 53 minutes until midnight. The clock read 11:47 when Seren climbed into the Duke's carriage. She'd spent 40 minutes arguing with herself, listing every reason this was madness. She'd spent another 10 searching for her parents, only to find her father at the card tables, and her mother pretending not to notice the pitying glances. In the end, it wasn't logic that decided her. It was Aldous and Venetia leaving together, her laughter carrying across the foyer, his hand possessive on her waist. She was done being the one who lost everything. The carriage interior was dark, lit by a small lantern casting shadows across velvet seats. Castian sat across from her. He'd removed his gloves. His hands were elegant but scarred, small marks across his knuckles. You came, he said, satisfied. My options were limited. Honesty. Good. He leaned forward. Before we proceed, I need to explain the terms clearly. First, this will be a real marriage, legal and binding. No annulment. Society would never accept less, and I won't give my grandmother ammunition to invalidate it. Serene's stomach dropped. You said this was temporary. I said the duration remained to be seen. The marriage is permanent. What we make of it beyond formalities, that's negotiable. I won't demand affection you don't feel. You'll have your own chambers, your own freedom. I ask only that in public. You play the devoted wife convincingly. And in private. We can be strangers sharing a residence if you prefer. Strangers. After Aldous' betrayal, the thought of being emotionally entangled again made her chest constrict. What do you get from this arrangement? Freedom from my grandmother's machinations. A wife who won't scheme for power she doesn't understand. And, he hesitated. Time. Time for what? His expression closed. That's not your concern. Not yet. I have conditions, she said, straightening her spine. His eyebrow rose. Do you indeed? You need me as much as I need this. That makes us equals in this negotiation. First, my family's debts cleared, all of them. Not as charity. Consider it my dowry in reverse. Done. Within the week. The ease of his agreement startled her. Second, my brother Niall. He's fallen in with Gregor Thane's organization. I want him extracted and given legitimate employment. You care deeply for him. He's my brother. I won't abandon him to be beaten while I live in luxury. I have resources for this. He may resent the interference. I'll take resentment over a shallow grave. Recognition stirred in those cool eyes. Agreed. Third condition. When this ends, however it ends, I walk away with my dignity. No scandal attached to my name. This marriage won't end, Miss Aldane. Everything ends eventually. I want protection. He leaned back. Then let me offer a counter condition. In 3 months' time, I'll reveal something. Who I truly am, what I truly control. If after learning this, you still wish to leave, I'll grant everything you've asked. Freedom, security, an untarnished reputation, enough money to live comfortably. And if I don't wish to leave? His ghost of a smile held something complicated. Then you'll understand why I needed a wife strong enough to stand beside me. The carriage rocked gently as it rolled through the dark streets, leaving the glittering ballroom further behind with each turn of the wheels. Outside, the city slept, unaware that inside this velvet-lined box, two strangers were bargaining with their futures. Why 3 months? She pressed. Why not tell me now, if it's so important? Because that's how long it takes to know if someone can be trusted with dangerous truths. Because I've made mistakes before, trusted too quickly, revealed too much, paid the price for that naivety. I won't make those mistakes again. You expect me to marry you not knowing what truth you're hiding? I expect you to marry me because the alternative is returning to a life that just proved it would devour you whole. Because you're intelligent enough to recognize opportunity when it appears, even wrapped in uncertainty. He extended his hand across the carriage, the same gesture he'd made on the dance floor, the same offer wrapped in ice and mystery. Do we have an agreement, Miss Aldane? Seren looked at his hand, looked at the calling card still clutched in her own, now crumpled at the edges, looked at the window, where the first gray hints of dawn were creeping across the sky, painting the city in shades of pearl and shadow. Her old life was over. Aldous had made sure of that with his announcement, his betrayal, his casual destruction of everything she'd built. But this man, this cold, calculating, infuriatingly mysterious Duke, was offering her a new one. Uncertain, possibly dangerous, definitely mad, but new. She took his hand. We have an agreement. His fingers closed around hers, cool and firm, sealing a bargain that would change everything. Welcome to Ashenmore, Miss Aldane. A change crossed his expression, there and gone too fast to identify. I do hope you survive it. The carriage lurched forward, carrying her toward a future she couldn't begin to imagine, and a husband whose secrets ran deeper than the shadows themselves. Behind them, the city grew smaller, swallowed by distance and morning mist. Ahead, something vast and unknown waited, and somewhere in the space between, Seren Aldane began to wonder exactly what she'd just agreed to become. Ashenmore materialized through the morning mist like a fortress risen from the bones of the earth itself. Seren pressed her face to the carriage window, her breath fogging the glass, exhaustion forgotten in the face of such overwhelming grandeur. She'd expected wealth. He was a duke, after all. She'd prepared herself for marble and gilt, for the kind of tasteful opulence she'd glimpsed at society balls. But this was something else entirely. Something almost frightening in its scale. Dark stone walls rose 3 stories high, flanked by towers that seemed to pierce the low-hanging clouds. The architecture was ancient, built for defense rather than beauty, with narrow windows that watched the approaching carriage like suspicious eyes. The ground stretched endlessly in every direction. Wild moors and twisted forests, nothing like the manicured gardens of city estates. Even the sky seemed different here, heavier, charged with secrets. This wasn't a home. This was a kingdom unto itself. It's been in my family for 400 years, Castian said, watching her reaction with that assessing gaze. Built during the succession wars, when my ancestors needed a fortress that could withstand siege. More military installation than manor, though my mother tried to soften it during her time here. Tried? Some things resist softening. Some places hold on to their original purpose, regardless of decorative efforts. His voice carried something she couldn't quite identify. Grief, perhaps, or resignation. You'll understand once you've lived here a while. The carriage rolled through iron gates, guarded by stone wolves with bared teeth. Servants appeared instantly as they entered the courtyard, dozens of them, lined in perfect formation. They were measuring her, finding her lacking. Your Grace. A severe woman in black approached, silver hair pulled into a punishing knot. The household is prepared. Shall I show Miss Aldane to her chambers? Not yet, Mrs. Craddock. My grandmother first. The housekeeper's expression flickered before smoothing to professional neutrality. The Dowager Duchess is in the morning room. Inside, Ashenmore was overwhelming. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow. Tapestries depicting ancient battles covered walls of gray stone. Portraits of Valthor ancestors lined every corridor, generations of sharp-featured men and women watching with eternal judgment. The East Wing will be yours, Castian said. Private sitting room, bedchamber, attached study. Complete freedom within those rooms. And outside them? You'll learn the rules quickly. The servants are loyal and discreet, but trust is earned here, not given. They stopped before a set of carved double doors depicting those same wolves from the gate, frozen in eternal vigilance. Castian's hand hesitated on the handle, the first sign of uncertainty she'd seen from him. My grandmother is difficult. That's an understatement. She's formidable, suspicious, and deeply opposed to anything that disrupts her plans. She won't accept this marriage easily. He met her eyes directly. But she can't stop it. Not legally. We wed this afternoon. This afternoon? Serene's voice pitched higher. I thought there would be time to prepare. There's a chapel on the grounds, a priest who owes me favors. The faster this is done, the less time anyone has to interfere. His gaze held hers. Every hour we delay is an hour she can use to prevent this. I want to know what I'm agreeing to before I'm legally bound to it forever. You agreed in the carriage. You made a bargain. His voice softened fractionally. I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to trust me for a few more hours. Could she? She barely knew this man. Now she stood in a stone fortress preparing to marry a stranger who spoke of secrets and things she might not survive. A few more hours, she said. Then I want answers. The doors swung open before she could respond. The woman seated by the fireplace could have been hewn from the same gray stone as the estate. White hair swept back from a face all angles and edges, elegant and terrifying in equal measure. Her black gown was adorned only by a single ruby brooch, the color of fresh blood, positioned directly over her heart. Her eyes, that same cool gray shade as Castian's, locked onto Serene with predatory focus. So, the Dowager Duchess Corisanda Valthor didn't rise, didn't offer greeting or courtesy, simply sat there like a queen on her throne, radiating disapproval. This is your rebellion. Grandmother. Castian's voice was ice meeting ice, two glaciers grinding against each other. Allow me to introduce Serene Aldane, my bride. Your bride. The word dripped contempt, poison wrapped in silk. A disgraced nobody from a bankrupt family, plucked from the same ballroom where her fiancé announced his engagement to another woman not 4 hours past. She smiled thinly, a knife's edge curving upward. Yes, I've already received detailed reports. News travels remarkably fast when it's sufficiently humiliating. Serene's face burned, but she held the older woman's gaze and dipped into a curtsy that would have made her deportment instructor proud. Your Grace, I apologize that we meet under such circumstances. Don't apologize to me yet, girl. I haven't decided if you're worth acknowledging. The Dowager turned her cutting gaze to Castian. Rowena Blackmere's family will be furious, her father in particular. The contracts were nearly finalized. Signatures awaited only the formality of announcement. This will cause more than scandal. It will cause consequences. Contracts I never signed. Arrangements I never agreed to. You made those plans without my consent, grandmother. I'm simply correcting your presumption. My presumption? The Dowager's voice could have frozen fire. My presumption is that you honor your duties to this family. That you understand the alliances required to maintain our position. That you don't throw away generations of careful work for—" Her eyes raked over Seren with naked disdain. This is my choice. Made freely. It stands." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees as grandmother and grandson stared at each other. A battle of wills Seren could feel crackling between them like lightning. Currents ran beneath this family. History she didn't understand. Power dynamics that went far deeper than simple disagreement about marriage. Finally, the dowager waved a dismissive hand. "Take her away. Get her cleaned up. She looks like she's been crying, and we can't have that. If this farce of a wedding must happen today, at least make her presentable." Her gaze cut back to Serene. "We'll speak later, girl. Alone. And you'll tell me everything you know about why my grandson truly chose you, or I'll make your life in this house very uncomfortable indeed." Castian took Seren's arm and guided her from the room before she could respond. "That went better than expected," Seren said weakly once the doors closed behind them. That was her being restrained. She's saving her full response for later, when she's had time to strategize. His grip on her arm tightened briefly, not painfully, but with urgency. "She'll try to pry information from you, pressure you, intimidate you into revealing whatever she thinks I'm hiding. I don't have any information to give. You haven't told me anything. Then tell her that. But be careful. She's masterful at extracting truths people don't know they're revealing. Don't let her manipulate you into corners. Is that what I am now? A piece on a chessboard between you and your grandmother?" He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. In the dim corridor light, his features seemed sculpted by shadow. "You're much more than that. But she won't see it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And what do you see?" For a moment, just a moment, something cracked in his controlled expression. Something that looked almost like vulnerability. Almost like hope. Then it was gone, walls rising again like castle defenses. "I see someone who survived what should have destroyed her. I see someone who negotiated terms with a duke at midnight, rather than simply accepting whatever was offered. I see potential." He resumed walking, and she had no choice but to follow. "The wedding is at 4 o'clock in the chapel. Try to rest before then. You'll need your strength for what comes next." As if summoned by the question, a young woman appeared at the end of the corridor, dark-haired like Castian, but with warmth where he had only frost. Her eyes were forest green rather than pale gray, and they sparkled with undisguised curiosity. Her smile was immediate and genuine, transforming the gloomy corridor into something almost welcoming. "You must be Seren." She rushed forward, taking both of Seren's hands before anyone could make proper introductions. "I'm Lysara, Castian's sister. I've heard absolutely nothing about you, because my brother tells me nothing about anything. But you're here, and you're marrying him today, and I couldn't be more delighted." The contrast with the dowager was so stark, so unexpected, that Seren nearly laughed despite everything. "Don't overwhelm her," Castian said dryly. "She's been through enough tonight." "Don't be tedious." Lysara shot him a look that only a sibling could deliver. "You've clearly overwhelmed her plenty already with your mysterious scheming. Let me fix what you've broken." She tugged Seren down the hallway. "Come. We have 3 hours, a wedding to prepare for, and I have approximately 10,000 questions about how on earth you ended up here." Seren glanced back at Castian. He stood watching them go, his face difficult to read. But just before she turned the corner, she caught something in his eyes. Relief, perhaps. Or possibly hope. Something human, at any rate, beneath all that ice. The wedding dress was white silk with silver embroidery, delicate as moonlight on snow, and it fit Seren as if it had been made for her. She stood before a full-length mirror in the finest guest chamber she'd ever seen, all cream and gold, with windows overlooking the wild moors, and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Her dark hair had been pinned into an elegant arrangement by skilled hands. Pearls adorned her throat and ears, real ones, heavy with meaning she didn't understand. The gown fell around her like water, catching the afternoon light. "It was our mother's," Lysara explained softly, adjusting the delicate sleeve with careful fingers. "She wore it when she married our father, 26 years ago. She was about your size. Castian must have remembered. He asked Mrs. Craddock to prepare it specifically for you." Serene's chest tightened unexpectedly. "He kept his mother's wedding dress? He keeps everything of hers, her books, her jewelry, her portrait in his study." Lysara's voice carried old grief, worn smooth by time. "She died when I was born. Complications from the birth. He was 8 years old. I think keeping her things is his way of holding on to someone he barely got to know." The dress suddenly felt heavier. This wasn't just silk and embroidery. This was memory, loss, a piece of someone beloved offered to a stranger. "You look terrified," Lysara observed, meeting Serene's eyes in the mirror. "I am terrified. I'm wearing a dead woman's dress to marry a man I met hours ago, in a house full of secrets, with a grandmother who wants to destroy me. Good. That means you're taking this seriously. That means you understand the stakes." Lysara settled onto the settee, tucking her legs beneath her with unconscious grace. Most of the women who've pursued Castian only saw the surface, the title, the fortune, the power. They never bothered to look underneath. And what's underneath? Lysara's expression grew complicated, weighted with truths she seemed uncertain about sharing. Grief, mostly. Our father died 2 years ago. It broke something in Castian. He was always serious. Father used to call him my little old man because he never played like other children. But after Father's death, he closed off completely, threw himself into work, stopped attending social functions, stopped seeing friends, stopped doing anything except managing estates and other responsibilities. Other responsibilities? You'll learn about those eventually. Or you won't. That's for Castian to decide. Lysara's eyes held Serene's in the mirror, suddenly serious. "But I'll tell you this. My brother chose you for a reason. He doesn't do anything without reason. If he saw something in you worth binding himself to forever, then there's something there, even if neither of you can see it yet." A knock interrupted before Serene could respond. "It's time," Mrs. Craddock announced through the door. The chapel was small and cold, built from the same gray stone as the rest of Ashenmoor, lit by candles that cast flickering shadows across ancient walls. Narrow windows let in slants of pale afternoon light. No guests gathered in the wooden pews. No flowers adorned the altar. No music swelled to announce her entrance. Just a priest who kept glancing nervously at the dowager, who sat in the front pew, radiating disapproval like heat from a forge. Just Lysara, who squeezed Serene's hand and whispered encouragement. Just Mrs. Craddock and a handful of senior servants bearing witness. And Castian. He stood at the altar in formal black, his dark hair swept back from that angular face, watching Serene walk toward him with an expression she couldn't read. He looked like something from a Gothic novel, the mysterious lord in his ancient castle, waiting to claim his bride. The ceremony was brief, words spoken and repeated, ancient vows that bound them together in the eyes of law and God. Serene heard herself promising to honor and cherish, heard Castian making the same promises, felt the weight of a simple gold band sliding onto her finger. When the priest instructed Castian to kiss his bride, he leaned in and pressed his lips to her forehead. Gentle, chaste, oddly tender. Not the kiss of a lover. The kiss of someone sealing a covenant. "It's done," he murmured against her skin, so quietly no one else could hear. "You're safe now. Whatever happens next, you're protected. Safe. Strange word for a bride to hear at her wedding. Protection. As if danger was assumed. As if safety was the exception rather than the rule. The dowager swept out without offering congratulations, her black skirt snapping against the stone floor. Lysara embraced Serene fiercely, whispering, "Welcome to the family. I'm so glad you're here. We needed something new in this house." Then there was dinner, awkward and largely silent in a cavernous dining room designed for 50, where 3 people sat, clustered at one end of a table that stretched into shadow. The dowager picked at her food and made pointed comments about duty and the responsibilities of station. Lysara tried to lighten the mood with chatter about upcoming social events. Castian ate methodically and said almost nothing. When the dowager finally retired with a parting remark about how she expected to see improvement tomorrow, Serene felt her shoulders drop with relief. "Don't let her intimidate you," Lysara said, squeezing Serene's hand across the table. "She's all thorns at first, but there's something softer underneath. You just have to survive long enough to find it." "That's reassuring." Lysara laughed, a bright sound that seemed foreign in this stone-heavy house. "I'm being summoned by my maid. Something about correspondence that arrived while we were at the ceremony. I'll find you tomorrow. We have so much to discuss." She departed in a whirl of green silk, leaving Serene and Castian alone for the first time as husband and wife. The silence stretched between them, filled with uncertainty. "I'll show you to your chambers," he said finally. They walked through empty corridors, their footsteps echoing against stone. The east wing was quieter than the rest of the house, warmer, more human-scaled. Tapestries here depicted gardens instead of battles. The portraits showed women reading, children playing, moments of domestic peace rather than martial glory. Castian opened a door to reveal a suite that made Serene catch her breath despite everything. Soft blue walls the color of a summer sky, a fireplace already burning with welcoming warmth, a canopied bed draped in cream silk that looked impossibly inviting after the longest night of her life. "Your sitting room is through there," he pointed. "The study through that door, a small library through the next." He paused. "The door at the far end connects to my chambers, but it locks from your side. You control when, if, it ever opens. I will never enter without invitation." The consideration in the gesture surprised her. He'd thought about her comfort, her autonomy, her need to feel safe in this unfamiliar place. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for all of this." He nodded, turning to leave, then stopped, his hand on the doorframe. "You did well today, with my grandmother, with the ceremony, with all of it." His voice was quieter now, stripped of its usual controlled precision. "Most women would have fled by the time my grandmother finished her first sentence. I don't have anywhere to flee to. We've established that. That's not why you stayed." Serene met his gaze. "No? No." He studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "You stayed because you refused to be defeated, because you'd rather face an impossible situation than surrender to an inevitable one. It's written all over you, in how you hold yourself, how you speak, how you look at challenges." A ghost of something, not quite a smile, crossed his face. "That's why I chose you, Serene. Not because of your circumstances, because of who you are within them." He left before she could respond, closing the door softly behind him. Serene sank onto the edge of the magnificent bed, overwhelmed and exhausted, and utterly alone. She was the Duchess of Ashenmore now, married to a stranger, living in a fortress full of secrets and hostile relatives. And somewhere beneath it all, buried under layers of ice and mystery, was a man who'd looked at her tonight like she might actually matter. She didn't know what to do with that. 3 weeks passed, and Serene began to learn the rhythms of Ashenmore, She learned that Castian rose before dawn, vanishing into his study with correspondence that arrived by messenger at all hours. She learned that he took breakfast alone, dinner with her, and Lysara, when his grandmother didn't interfere, and rarely spoke more than necessary. She learned that the servants respected him absolutely, obeyed without question, and never discussed his business within her hearing, no matter how carefully she listened. She learned that she was being kept at arm's length from something, and she still had no idea what. But she also learned gentler things. She learned that Lysara was brilliant and bored, desperate for companionship after years of isolation in this remote estate. She learned that Mrs. Craddock's severity masked genuine care for the household's well-being. She learned which corridors caught the morning light, which library alcoves offered the best reading spots, which gardens had been allowed to grow wild and beautiful. She learned that letters arrived regularly from London now, letters addressed to her mother, containing bank drafts that would clear the debts she'd carried for years. She learned that a formal offer of employment had been extended to her brother Niall through intermediaries, a position managing accounts for a shipping concern, legitimate work, safe work, a chance to rebuild himself. Castian had kept his promises, all of them, without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. "You're brooding," Lysara observed one morning, finding Saren in the library with a book she hadn't actually been reading. "I'm thinking. Same thing in this house. Brooding runs in the family. You'll start doing it too, eventually." Lysara plopped into the chair beside her, arranging her skirts with habitual grace. "What's troubling you?" "Everything. Nothing." The way Castian looked at her sometimes across the dinner table, like he wanted to say something, then thought better of it. The locked doors she'd discovered in the north wing, secured with complex mechanisms she couldn't begin to understand. The letters marked with seals she didn't recognize. The visitors, who came at odd hours and left before anyone could see their faces. "I don't understand him," Seren admitted. "Your brother. He's given me everything I asked for, protected my family, cleared our debts, made sure my brother has options. But he barely speaks to me. He's generous from a distance and absent up close. Few people understand him. He doesn't let them close enough to try. But you do. You're his sister. You grew up together." Lysara's smile dimmed like a candle guttering. "I understand the boy he was before, the one who used to read me stories and teach me to ride and sneak me sweets from the kitchen when grandmother wasn't looking." Her voice softened with old affection. "The man he's become since father died. That version keeps even me at a distance. What happened when your father died? Beyond the obvious grief?" The pause that followed was too long, too weighted, too careful. "Castian inherited more than a title," Lysara said slowly, choosing each word with visible deliberation. "He inherited responsibilities, obligations, things that father managed quietly for years, things that required constant attention and judgment and sacrifice." She stopped. "I shouldn't say more." "Why not?" "Because he asked me not to. Because there are boundaries I've agreed to respect, even when they frustrate me." Lysara looked toward the window, where rain streaked the glass in silver rivulets. "And because there are things in motion, Seren. Things that started long before you arrived. You're caught in the middle of them now, whether you realize it or not. Whether any of us intended it or not." A chill ran down Seren's spine despite the fire crackling in the hearth. "What things?" asked Castian. "He won't tell me. He keeps saying to wait, to trust him, that I'll understand eventually." "Then make him tell you. Push back. Demand answers." Lysara stood, squeezing Seren's shoulder. "He needs someone who'll challenge him. Everyone in this house just obeys. They respect him. They follow his orders. But no one questions him. Maybe that's what he requires as a leader, but it's not what he needs as a man." That evening, Seren didn't wait for Castian to retire to his study after dinner. Instead, she found him there first, waiting in the chair across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap, and her expression determined. He stopped in the doorway when he saw her, surprise flickering briefly across his features before the familiar control reasserted itself. Seren. We need to talk, really talk. Not pleasantries over dinner or passing comments in hallways. An actual conversation about what's happening in this house. His expression shuddered immediately, walls rising like castle defenses. About what specifically? About why servants go silent when I enter rooms. About the locked doors in the north wing that I'm clearly expected to ignore. About visitors who arrive at midnight and leave before anyone can see their faces. About the letters marked with seals I don't recognize. She rose, facing him directly. About whatever it is you're hiding that everyone in this house knows except me. You agreed to wait 3 months. I agreed before I realized I'd be living in the dark, while everyone around me whispers about things I don't understand. Before I realized I'd be treated like a guest in my own home, a guest with limited clearance, limited trust, limited everything. She stepped closer. I'm your wife, Castian. Legally, permanently, as you insisted. Doesn't that earn me something? Even a partial truth? The conflict on his face was visible, the first time she'd seen him genuinely struggle with his legendary control. Something warred behind his eyes. Duty and desire. Caution and need. It's not about trust, he said finally. Then what is it about? Protection. From what? He moved past her to the window, staring out at the rain-soaked grounds where night was falling fast. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. From the truth about what I am, what I control, what my father controlled before me, and his father before him, stretching back generations. He turned, and something in his expression made her heart stutter. There are forces in this empire, Seren, powers that operate behind crowns and parliaments, that move nations without anyone knowing they exist. Powers that shape wars and trade routes and royal successions. My family has stood at the center of those forces for 400 years. Seren's mouth went dry. What are you saying? I'm saying that the Duke of Ashenmore is a mask, a convenient fiction for the public, for society, for everyone who doesn't need to know the truth. His voice dropped lower still, weighted with secrets too heavy to speak aloud. Beneath that mask is something else entirely. Someone who influences half the decisions that shape this empire. Someone with enemies who would destroy everything he loves to reach him. The room tilted. The fire seemed suddenly too bright, too hot. Everything she thought she'd understood about this marriage, this house, this man, all of it shifting beneath her feet. And now, Castian continued, his pale eyes burning into hers. You're tied to that someone. Which means those enemies will eventually come for you, too. He crossed the room, stopping inches away. His hand rose to her face, not quite touching, hovering like he was afraid she might break, or flee, or both. That's why I wanted to wait, to see if you could handle this world before dragging you deeper into it, to know if you were strong enough to bear the weight of these truths. He set his jaw with resolve. But you're right. You deserve honesty. You've earned that much. So here's the first piece of it. What? The midnight visitors aren't criminals or conspirators. They're generals, ministers, ambassadors. The shadow council that actually runs this empire while the crown waves from balconies and signs documents it doesn't understand. His thumb brushed her cheek, feather-light. And in 2 weeks, they're gathering here, at Ashenmore, to decide the succession of the Eastern Territories. You'll meet them. They'll assess you. And if they find you wanting... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Why are you telling me this now? Serene whispered. Tonight? After weeks of silence? Because you asked, because you pushed, because you refused to accept the surface answers and demanded something real. He stopped, something raw flickering through his expression. Vulnerability he seemed surprised to find himself showing. Because I'm starting to think you might be strong enough to stand beside me after all. Because I want you to be strong enough. Because... He stopped again, shaking his head. I don't know how to say the rest. Not yet. He released her and stepped back, the walls coming up again. But they seemed thinner now. More permeable. The Thornwood Ball is in 3 days. Our first public appearance as husband and wife. Society will be watching, judging, drawing conclusions. My grandmother will be watching closest of all. And there will be people there who serve the Shadow Council. People who will report back everything they observe about you. What do I need to do? Be exactly who you've been since you arrived. Bold, unbreakable, unafraid. His ghost of a smile held no warmth, only something that looked almost like hope. Can you do that, Seren? She thought of Aldous, of public humiliation, of watching her life collapse while 300 people stared and whispered. She'd survived that. She'd walked out of the ashes and into this impossible new life. She could survive anything. Watch me, she said. The Thornwood Ball glittered like a jewel box come to life, chandeliers dripping crystal fire, gowns in every color of sunset and twilight, music that swelled and retreated like waves against a shore. Seren stood at the top of the grand staircase in midnight blue velvet, Castian's hand warm at the small of her back. Below them, 500 faces turned upward, watching, judging, hungry for scandal. Her throat tightened, but she kept her chin high. Ready, Castian murmured. No. Good. Neither am I. But we do it anyway. They descended together, step by careful step, Seren's hand resting on Castian's arm with practiced grace. The whisper started immediately, a susurrus of speculation that followed them across the ballroom like smoke from a fire. Serene caught fragments. The jilted one, married within hours. What could he possibly see in her? Desperate? Scheming? Nobody. Presume she trapped him somehow. She lifted her chin higher with each word. Duchess of Ashenmore. A woman materialized before them, blocking their path with deliberate precision. Raven-haired, alabaster-skinned, with eyes like polished obsidian that reflected the chandelier light. Her crimson gown clung to her figure like a declaration of war, cut lower than fashion strictly permitted, designed to draw and hold attention. How absolutely fascinating to finally meet you. Seren didn't need an introduction. She knew exactly who this was. Lady Rowena Blackmere, she said evenly. Your reputation precedes you. As does yours. Rowena's smile was a knife wrapped in silk, beautiful and deadly. Though I confess, the stories painted a rather tragic picture. Abandoned at a ball, humiliated before hundreds. And then, her dark gaze flickered to Castian with something like hunger. Rescued by a duke who'd never shown interest in anyone. How terribly romantic. Almost too perfect to be believable. Romance takes many forms. Not all of them fit society's preferred narratives. Indeed it does. Rowena stepped closer, her voice dropping to dangerous intimacy. Some forms are genuine. Others are convenient arrangements made in desperation. Little bargains struck in dark gardens when options are running out. Her eyes glittered. I wonder which applies here. Rowena. Castian's voice cut through like frost on glass. You forget yourself. Do I? She turned that glittering gaze on him, anger and desire mixed together like poison. I forget nothing, Your Grace, especially not promises made to my family, contracts nearly signed, expectations carefully cultivated, over years of patience and planning. Her smile sharpened. Did you think I would simply accept this substitution? This nobody plucked from disgrace to warm your bed while I'm discarded like yesterday's fashion? I think, Castillon said quietly, dangerously, that you should walk away before you say something you'll genuinely regret. Something with consequences. Regret? Rowena laughed, a sound like breaking glass, beautiful and painful. The only regret here is yours, Your Grace. You'll realize it soon enough, when you're tired of playing savior to damaged goods, when you want a woman of actual substance, when you remember what you could have had. She glanced at Serene with undisguised contempt. I give it 3 months before you're knocking on my door again, begging forgiveness. She swept away before anyone could respond, leaving silence in her wake like the aftermath of a storm. Serene's hands trembled at her sides. She forced them still through pure willpower. She's wrong, Castillon said. Is she? He turned her to face him, his grip firm on her shoulders. Look at me, Serene. She did. Those gray eyes held something she hadn't seen before, not coldness, but intensity. Purpose. Something almost fierce. You are not damaged goods. You are not a substitution. You are not a bargain I made in desperation or regret. His voice dropped lower. You are exactly where you're supposed to be, and everyone in this room who doubts that will learn the truth soon enough. What truth? That I chose you. Not despite your circumstances, because of them. Because you survived what would have destroyed someone weaker. Because you're standing here, facing these wolves in their silk and diamonds, when you could have hidden away and surrendered. His thumb brushed her shoulder. That's not desperation. That's strength. And it's exactly what I need beside me. The music swelled. Couples took the floor in an elegant waltz. Dance with me, he said. This time it wasn't a command. It was a request. She took his hand. They moved together with surprising grace, Serene following his lead as naturally as breathing. She felt the eyes tracking them, curious, hostile, calculating. But wrapped in Castillon's arms, the judgment felt distant, manageable, almost irrelevant. People are staring, she whispered. Let them stare until their eyes ache. I don't care. They're wondering why you married me. They can keep wondering until the end of time. I don't owe them explanations. His hand pressed more firmly against her back, drawing her slightly closer than strict propriety allowed. I don't owe anyone explanations except you. You said there are people here from the Shadow Council, people who will report back. His expression shifted, the lightness fading. I said they would assess you. I didn't say their assessment would determine anything. It doesn't matter. Their opinion of you changes nothing about my decisions. What matters is whether you can survive what's coming, whether you can stand beside me when the full weight of my responsibilities becomes clear. He spun her gracefully, pulling her closer as they turned. I'm starting to believe you can. The waltz ended. Castillon held her a moment longer than necessary, his lips near her ear. In 10 days, the council gathers at Ashenmoor. They'll make decisions that affect millions of lives. And they'll watch you. Not because you're my wife, but because they need to know if you're a liability or an asset. If you're a weakness, they can exploit, or a strength that makes me more formidable. And if they decide I'm a liability, his silence was answer enough. The weight of it pressed against her chest like stone. The days after the ball passed in a blur of preparation. Serene learned the names and histories of council members, 12 figures who operated in shadows, who moved nations like chess pieces, who answered to no crown but wielded more power than any king. Castillon taught her in late-night sessions in his study, maps and documents spread across every surface, his voice patient despite his exhaustion. Lord Thasian Morn, controller of Eastern trade routes, a quiet man with kind eyes, who'd been her father's friend decades ago, before the fall. Lady Vespera Caney, whose network of informants spanned 3 continents, ancient, sharp, rumored to know every secret worth knowing. General Aldrich Fenworth, who commanded armies that existed on no official roster, blunt-spoken and honorable, loyal to the council rather than any single member, and 8 others, each more formidable than the last. "They've all served with my family for generations," Castian explained one evening. Maps covered every surface, marked with symbols Seren was finally beginning to understand. "My father held them together through force of will and earned trust. His death created a vacuum that others want to fill. And you filled it." "I'm trying." For the first time, she heard exhaustion in his voice, real, unguarded weariness. "Some of them respected my father enough to give me time to prove myself. Others see opportunity in my relative youth and inexperience. They test me constantly. Every decision I make is scrutinized, including your decision to marry me. Especially that decision. Rowena's father is among those who see opportunity." Castian's expression darkened. "Lord Blackmere controls the western mining operations. Half the Empire's iron and coal flows through his territories. The marriage he wanted for Rowena wasn't about connection to my title. It was about consolidating power within the council itself, positioning his family to make a move when the time was right. And by marrying me instead, I denied him that consolidation, made a permanent enemy in the process." He looked at her directly. "Another truth I should have told you earlier. Another danger I've placed you in." Seren moved closer, studying the maps, trade routes and territorial boundaries, alliance lines and contested zones, the skeleton of an empire laid bare. "Show me everything," she said. "Show you what?" "Everything. The territories, the alliances, the enemies, the history of every grudge and every alliance." She met his surprised gaze steadily. "If I'm going to stand beside you when the council arrives, I need to understand what I'm standing in the middle of. I won't be a liability they can exploit. I refuse to be." For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then his expression shifted, the walls lowering just slightly, letting warmth through the cracks. "Come here." He guided her to the largest map, his hand warm against her back. For hours, he explained. Trade routes and territorial disputes, old grudges and fragile alliances, the delicate balance that kept the empire functioning while crowns and parliaments performed their public theater. Wars that had been prevented, successions that had been arranged, crises that had been managed from the shadows. Seren listened, asked questions, challenged assumptions, pointed out weaknesses he hadn't considered, connections he'd overlooked. And somewhere in those hours, something changed between them. "You understand this better than most council members," Castian said finally, something like wonder in his voice. "I understand survival, how to look at a situation and see not just what's happening, but what's about to happen. Politics is just survival, with better clothing and higher stakes." He laughed, an actual laugh, rusty with disuse but genuine. It transformed his face, softening the sharp edges, making him look younger, almost approachable, almost warm. "What?" she asked. "Nothing." But he was still smiling. "You just reminded me of my father. He said something similar once. He would have liked you." Was that a compliment? The highest I'm capable of giving. They stood close now, closer than they'd been since the wedding. Seren could smell cedar and something darker, ink and old books, the scent of late nights and endless work. Could see the faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the tension he carried in his shoulders like armor. "When did you last sleep properly?" she asked. "I don't remember. Weeks, maybe." "That's not sustainable. Neither is ruling a shadow empire while pretending to be a simple duke. I do what's necessary." His smile faded. I've always done what's necessary. And what's necessary tonight? The question hung between them, weighted with meanings she hadn't quite intended, but didn't take back. Castian's hand rose to her face, hovering just above her cheek. I should let you rest. The council arrives in days. You'll need your strength. That's not what I asked. His eyes searched hers, looking for permission, looking for certainty, looking for something he seemed afraid to find. Serene. I'm tired of being careful. She closed the distance, pressing her cheek into his palm. I'm tired of locked doors and separate chambers, and pretending this marriage is just an arrangement between strangers. It was supposed to be. That's what we agreed. Things change. Agreements evolve. People surprise themselves. She looked up at him. You said you chose me because I was strong, because I survived. Maybe I'm strong enough for this too. He kissed her. Not the chaste brush of lips from their wedding. This was real, deepened, searching, and hungry. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling pins loose until dark waves spilled over her shoulders. She gripped his jacket, pulling him closer, closer, until there was no space left between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. This complicates everything, he whispered. I know. If I lose you now, you won't. You can't promise that. The council, my enemies, the dangers I've dragged you into. Neither can you promise me safety. No one can promise anyone safety. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But I'd rather have something real and risk losing it than spend the rest of my life with locked doors between us, wondering what might have been. He kissed her again, gentler this time, but no less intense. That night, the connecting door between their chambers stayed open. The morning of the council gathering arrived gray and cold, the kind of day that seemed to swallow color from the world. Seren woke alone in Castian's bed, his side already cool. A note rested on the pillow, written in his precise hand. Preparations required. Lysara will help you dress. Trust no one today but family. Stay alert. C. Trust no one. The words echoed as she prepared, as Lysara helped her into a gown of deep emerald that felt like armor, as they descended together to a house transformed. Ashenmore had filled with strangers overnight, servants she didn't recognize, moving with efficient purpose, guards in unfamiliar livery positioned at every entrance, and faces, hard, calculating faces that tracked her movement through every corridor with undisguised assessment. Stay close to me, Lysara whispered, linking their arms. Until the formal dinner tonight, you're safest in company. Don't let anyone draw you into private conversation. Where's Castian? In session with the council. They've been locked in the north wing since dawn. The doors won't open until they've completed preliminary business. The locked doors. Finally, Seren understood their purpose. Not to hide things from her, but to protect whatever happened inside. Hours passed, like thick honey. Seren played her role, the gracious hostess, the demure wife, the woman who smiled and deflected and revealed nothing. She felt the assessment in every glance, the weighing, the silent judgments being formed and filed away. By late afternoon, she was exhausted from performing. She'd retreated to a quiet alcove near the library, seeking a moment of solitude, when she heard voices, low, urgent, familiar. The Dowager, and someone else. A man. Can't trust her. She came from nothing, knows nothing about our work, and now he's told her everything. The second voice was male, cultured, dripping disdain. Your grandson has lost his judgment. My grandson, the Dowager said coldly, has made his choice. Unfortunate as I find it. Unfortunate? It's catastrophic. The Blackmere Alliance would have secured the Eastern Territories for a generation. Instead, we have this. This merchant's daughter playing at nobility, wearing your daughter-in-law's dress, sharing your grandson's bed. It's an insult to everything this council represents. Seren's blood ran cold. She pressed deeper into the shadows. What do you propose, Lord Blackmere? So this was Rowena's father, the enemy Castian had warned her about. Remove her. Quietly. An accident, perhaps, or a sudden illness. She's new to the household. No one would question fragile health. The Duke would mourn appropriately, recover eventually, and we could redirect his attention to more suitable arrangements. The casualness of it stopped Seren's breath. He was discussing her murder like rearranging furniture. You forget yourself. The dowager's voice cracked like a whip. Whatever I think of the girl, she is now family. Valthors do not dispose of family, however it was acquired. You'd protect her? After everything you've said about this marriage being a disaster? A long pause. Then, softer. I would protect my grandson's choices, even the ones I disagree with, even the ones I fought against. That is what family does. That is what loyalty means. Not agreeing with every decision, but standing behind them once made. Then you're a fool, Coruscant, and fools don't survive in our world. Sentiment is weakness, and weakness is death. Footsteps retreated, heavy with anger. Seren pressed herself deeper into the alcove, heart pounding. Lord Blackmere wanted her dead. The Dowager, harsh, critical, disapproving, had defended her. And somewhere in the North Wing, Castian sat with these same people, making decisions that shaped empires. Unaware that his wife had just been marked for removal, she had to tell him. But when she reached the North Wing, guards blocked her path with immovable resolve. Council is in session, Your Grace. No interruptions for any reason. It's urgent. Lives depend on. No interruptions. Duke's orders. She was still arguing, growing desperate, when the doors finally opened. Hours later, after dark, when Seren had nearly worn a groove in the corridor floor from pacing. Castian emerged, looking haggard, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there that morning. Behind him, council members filed out, and among them, Lord Blackmere. His dark eyes met hers across the corridor. A slow smile spread across his face, satisfied, knowing, cruel. Duchess, he bowed, perfectly correct, perfectly mocking. Such a pleasure to see you so, invested in the proceedings, hovering at the door like a nervous mother. How touching. Seren held his gaze without flinching. The pleasure is mine, Lord Blackmere. He walked away, and the threat lingered in the air like poison. What happened? Castian gripped her arm, pulling her aside. You look like you've seen death itself. We need to talk, now, privately. In his study, she told him everything. The overheard conversation, the Dowager's unexpected defense, Lord Blackmere's casual suggestion of murder, delivered as if discussing the weather. Castian listened in absolute silence. When she finished, his expression was carved from granite. I'll handle Blackmere. How? You don't need to know the specifics. I think I absolutely do, given he just suggested having me killed over afternoon tea. Seren. He caught her face between his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Trust me. Please. I will not let anyone hurt you. Not Blackmere. Not anyone. I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about you. She gripped his wrists. These people are dangerous. You've spent 2 years trying to hold them together, to fill your father's place. But what happens when they decide you're the obstacle? When they decide your attachment to me is weakness they can exploit? That won't happen. It could. It already has. Blackmere sees me as your weakness. How many others see the same thing? Intensity burned in his eyes. You're not my weakness. They don't know that. They can't see what I see. She softened her grip, her voice dropping. They see a nobody from a bankrupt family who trapped a duke into marriage. They don't see someone who stayed up until midnight learning trade routes. They don't see someone who can read a situation and predict what's coming. They see liability. Then we'll show them differently. He released her face, stepping back. Tomorrow is the final session. The council will vote on the Eastern succession. After that, most of them will leave. But tonight there's a formal dinner. Every council member will attend. Every ally and enemy in the same room, watching each other, watching you. His jaw set with determination. And you'll sit beside me, as my Duchess, and prove to all of them that you're not a liability. And if I can't? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The formal dinner was a masterwork of tension disguised as elegance. 24 chairs surrounded a table that could seat 50. Council members arranged by rank and alliance, each placement strategic. The dowager sat at one end, presiding like a queen despite her lack of formal position. Castian sat at the other end, calm and controlled despite everything. And Seren sat at his right hand, wearing emerald silk and a pleasant expression that hid her terror. Lord Blackmere sat directly across from her. His smile never wavered. Such a charming tableau, Lady Vespera Caney observed from Seren's left. The spymaster was ancient, her face lined with decades of secrets, her dark eyes missing nothing. The young Duke and his unexpected bride. Quite the romantic story. All of London is buzzing. Romance has little place in our world, Lady Kane. Surely you know that better than anyone. No. Then what does have place, young Duchess? Survival. Loyalty. The willingness to protect what matters, regardless of cost or consequence. Seren held the older woman's gaze without flinching. I may be new to your world, but those are languages I speak fluently. I've been speaking them my entire life. Something kindled in Vespera's ancient eyes. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. The dinner progressed through 7 elaborate courses, each more beautiful than the last. Conversation swirled, alliances tested, positions probed, threats veiled in pleasantries and compliments. Seren said little, but listened to everything, cataloging observations the way Castian had taught her. She noticed how Lord Blackmere deferred to General Fenworth, seeking the military man's approval. She noticed how Lady Vespera watched everyone with equal attention, her dark eyes recording every glance and gesture. She noticed how Lord Thasian Morn kept glancing at the dowager, some silent communication passing between old allies. And she noticed how Castian commanded the table without raising his voice, a word here, a glance there, redirecting conversations, diffusing tensions, maintaining balance through sheer force of will. This was his battlefield. These were his enemies and allies. And he navigated them with the same cold precision he brought to everything, until Lord Blackmere decided to attack openly. Your Grace, he said, during a lull in conversation, his voice carrying across the sudden silence with deliberate clarity. I must confess curiosity about your Duchess's qualifications for her position. Every head turned. Qualifications? Castian's voice could have frozen fire. Forgive me, I mean no offense, but the Council has always valued transparency in such matters. Your father's wife came from the Valdris family, impeccable lineage. Your grandmother was a Thornwood, legendary connections, distinguished families with clear contributions to our cause. Blackmere spread his hands in false innocence. The Aldane family, however, I confess I know nothing of them beyond unfortunate bankruptcy. Enlighten us. The silence was absolute. Everyone waited. Seren set down her wineglass with careful precision. You're right, Lord Blackmere. The Aldane family has no distinguished lineage, no ancestral wealth, no political connections worth mentioning. She let the words land, watching his smile widen. My father was a merchant who lost everything to bad fortune and a treacherous partner. My mother takes in mending to survive. My brother struggled with gambling and dangerous associations until recently. Blackmere's smile grew triumphant, victory gleaming in his cold eyes. And yet, Seren continued, her voice strengthening. I am sitting at this table, in this house, wearing these jewels, married to this man. She leaned forward slightly. Do you know why, Lord Blackmere? His smile faltered. Because I survived. When my world collapsed around me, I didn't crumble with it. When I was publicly humiliated before hundreds of people, I didn't hide in shame. When a stranger offered me an impossible choice at midnight, I took his hand and stepped into the unknown without looking back. She let her gaze sweep the table, meeting every pair of eyes. I have no lineage to recommend me, no fortune to buy favor, no network of spies or armies or trade routes. All I have is the absolute refusal to be defeated. Silence pressed against the walls like a living thing. His Grace didn't choose me despite my circumstances. He chose me because of them. Because he understood that someone who survives destruction learns things that those born to privilege never will. Because hardship is its own education. Because I don't need to be taught what's at stake. I've lived it. She turned to Blackmere directly, her voice quiet but cutting. I've heard what you think of me, my lord. Damaged goods. Nobody. Liability. His face paled. But I wonder, when everything you have is stripped away, when your lineage and wealth and connections mean nothing, what will be left of you? She smiled, and it was not kind. I already know what's left of me. I've met her in the mirror every morning for years. Can you say the same? The silence stretched like a held breath. Then, from the head of the table, the dowager laughed. Not a polite chuckle, a genuine, startled laugh that made everyone turn in surprise. Well, she said, raising her glass, it seems my grandson's taste is better than I credited. To the Duchess of Ashenmore, who has just reminded us all why spirit matters more than pedigree. One by one, other glasses rose. Lady Vespera, her ancient eyes gleaming with approval. Lord Thasian, with a genuine smile. General Fenworth, nodding with military respect. Lord Blackmere sat motionless, his smile gone, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Castian took Seren's hand beneath the table and squeezed, his grip warm and fierce. She'd passed the test. But as she met Blackmere's eyes across the table, dark with hatred, burning with humiliation, she knew with absolute certainty. This wasn't over. He would come for her again. And next time, he wouldn't be so indirect about it. The council session the next morning erupted into chaos before noon. Seren was in the library when she heard the shouting, voices raised in the north wing, sharp enough to carry through stone walls and closed doors. She gathered her skirts and ran. Guards moved to stop her at the corridor entrance, but Lysara was already there, face pale as milk. What's happening? Blackmere made his move. Lysara's voice shook with barely contained fear. He's challenged Castian's leadership, demanded a formal vote of confidence, claims Castian is too young, too compromised by personal attachments, too distracted to lead effectively. Can he do that? Just challenge like that? The council rules allow it. If enough members support the challenge, Castian loses his position. Everything falls apart. Her green eyes were wide. Everything. The doors burst open. Council members spilled out, some furious, others calculating, all of them radiating tension. Lord Blackmere strode through them, his expression triumphant. He stopped when he saw Seren. Duchess! His bow was mocking, exaggerated. I'm afraid your husband's position is somewhat precarious at the moment. Perhaps you should prepare for a change in circumstances. Start packing those lovely borrowed gowns. What have you done? Merely exercised my rights as a council member. Your husband has proven himself compromised, distracted by domestic concerns when he should be focused on the Empire's needs. His judgment is clouded by—" His gaze raked over her with deliberate insult. "Sentiment. The council will never support you." "No? I have 7 votes already. I only need 1 more." His smile was a blade. "The vote is at noon. I suggest you prepare yourself for disappointment." He walked away, and the threat lingered in the air like poison. Seren pushed past the remaining council members, searching for Castian. She found him in the council chamber, standing alone at the head of a massive table, papers scattered before him like fallen leaves. He looked up when she entered. His face was devastated. "It's not over," she said immediately. "He has 7 votes. Lady Vespera hasn't committed either way. She's the swing vote, and she's refusing to meet with me. Then we find another way to reach her. Serene." He said her name like it hurt. "If this vote goes against me, everything changes. The protection I've offered you, the security I promised, it all disappears. Blackmere will see to that personally. I don't care about protection. You should. I care about you." She crossed the room, gripping his hands. "Stop treating this like you've already lost. We have until noon. What do we do?" He stared at her. Something in his expression shifted. Despair cracking, determination bleeding through. "There's one way, but it requires revealing something I've kept hidden even from the council." "What?" He released her hands, moving to a locked cabinet in the corner. From it, he withdrew a leather case, worn with age, secured with complex mechanisms. Inside was a single document, heavy paper, covered in seals and signatures spanning generations. My father didn't just lead the council. He held something over them. Insurance. Castian's voice was barely audible. "This document contains evidence of every questionable decision the council has made for the past 50 years. Every compromise with principles. Every betrayal of stated values. Every crime committed in the name of stability." Seren's breath caught. "Including Blackmere's. Including everyone's. My father called it the Covenant. It was his guarantee that no one would move against him or the family. Mutual, assured destruction. Why haven't you used it?" "Because using it means destroying the council entirely. Every alliance, every arrangement, every carefully balanced relationship, all of it collapses." He met her eyes. "I'd rather lose my position than burn everything my father built. Even if losing your position means losing your life. Losing everything we've started." "Yes." He said it without hesitation, then softer. "Some things matter more than winning." "No." Seren grabbed the document from his hands. "You don't get to sacrifice yourself on principle. Not when there's another way." "What other way?" "We don't use this against everyone. We use it against one person." She held up the Covenant. "How much does this document contain about Lord Blackmere specifically?" Understanding dawned in Castian's eyes. "Enough to destroy him 10 times over. Embezzlement. Unauthorized negotiations with foreign powers. Assassination orders. Things he'd hang for if they became public. Then we show Lady Vespera. Not the whole document. Just Blackmere's sections. We prove he's not trying to save the council from compromised leadership. He's trying to seize power for himself before his own crimes come to light. She'll want to know where the information came from. Then tell her. Tell her everything. If we're asking her to trust us, we have to trust her first." Seren gripped his arm. "You said she values information above all else. Give her information no one else has. Make her understand what's really at stake." Castian stared at her. This woman who'd walked into his world 5 weeks ago, who'd faced down every challenge he'd thrown at her, who was now standing in a council chamber plotting political warfare like she'd been born to it. "When did you become this?" he asked quietly. "I've always been this. You just finally let me show you." He kissed her. Quick. Fierce. full of something that felt like hope. Let's go convince a spymaster. The council chamber fell silent as Castian entered at noon, Serene at his side. Their hands joined. Every seat was filled. Lord Blackmere sat at the far end, his supporters flanking him, confidence radiating from every line of his posture. Lady Vespera occupied the center chair, her expression revealing nothing of their earlier conversation. The dowager sat straight-backed, watching everything with hawk-sharp eyes. "The vote has been called," General Fenworth announced, standing as arbiter. "Duke Castian Valthor's fitness to lead is in question. Lord Blackmere has presented his case. The Duke may now respond." Castian released Serene's hand and stepped forward. "Lord Blackmere claims I'm compromised, distracted, unfit to lead." His voice carried through the chamber, cold and certain. "He points to my marriage as evidence of poor judgment. A woman of no family, no fortune, no political value." Murmurs rippled through the room. "He's right about her circumstances. He's wrong about everything else." Castian's gaze swept the table. "I didn't marry Serene Aldane despite her lack of political connections. I married her because of it. Because she owed nothing to anyone in this room. Because her loyalty couldn't be bought, couldn't be inherited, couldn't be arranged by ambitious families with ulterior motives." He turned to Blackmere directly. "Unlike some marriages that have been proposed to this council." Blackmere's face darkened. "But my wife's qualifications aren't why we're here." Castian's voice hardened. "We're here because Lord Blackmere wants power, not stability, not the good of the Empire. Power. And he's willing to destroy everything my father built, everything this council has maintained for generations, to get it." "Lies," Blackmere spat. "I seek only what's best for Lady Vespera." Castian cut him off with surgical precision. "You received a document this morning. Would you share its contents with the council?" Every head turned to the spymaster. She rose slowly, ancient and terrible, a sheaf of papers in her gnarled hands. "I received evidence of 17 unauthorized operations conducted by Lord Blackmere over the past decade. Evidence of significant embezzlement from council funds. Evidence of secret negotiations with foreign powers without council approval." She set the papers on the table. "Evidence that Lord Blackmere's challenge isn't about leadership concerns. It's about preventing discovery of his own corruption before the Duke could expose it." Chaos erupted. Blackmere lunged to his feet. "This is fabrication, forgery. You can't possibly—" "Sit down." The dowager's voice cracked like thunder. "Before you embarrass yourself and your family further." Guards appeared at the doors. Blackmere looked around wildly, searching for allies, finding none. Even those who'd supported him moments ago were pulling away, distancing themselves from contamination. "The vote is void," General Fenworth declared. "Lord Blackmere is suspended pending full investigation. Duke Valthor retains leadership of this council." As guards led Blackmere away, his eyes found Serene across the chamber. The hatred in them was absolute, pure, undiluted, promising revenge. But so was his defeat. The council departed over the following days, some with pledges of renewed loyalty, others with careful neutrality, all of them looking at Serene differently than before. Not as a liability, not as an oddity, as something to be considered, respected, perhaps even feared. Lady Vespera found her on the morning of her departure, in the garden, where winter roses somehow still bloomed. "You have a gift for survival," the old spymaster said. "I've watched you these past days. You observe, you calculate, you act with precision when the moment demands it. I learned from necessity. The best teachers are often the cruelest." Vespera's dark eyes held something like approval. "Your husband is lucky to have found you. Luckier than he knows, perhaps. Or perhaps I'm lucky to have found him." Vespera smiled, a rare expression that transformed her ancient face. Perhaps you found each other exactly when you were both needed. The world works that way sometimes, for those wise enough to recognize it. She left Seren alone with the roses, and a warmth that had nothing to do with sunshine. Rowena Blackmere came to Ashenmore 3 days after her father's arrest. She found Seren in the library, appearing without warning, her beauty diminished by fury and fear. "You've destroyed us," she said without preamble. "My father will hang. Our family's reputation is ashes. Everything we built, generations of work, gone because you couldn't stay in your proper place." Seren set down her book calmly. "Your father destroyed himself, Lady Rowena. His crimes were his own. I merely ensured they came to light before he could commit more." "You think you've won?" Rowena's voice cracked. "You think this makes you one of them? You're still nothing. Still nobody. Still the jilted girl who got lucky." "Perhaps," Seren stood, facing the woman who'd once seemed so terrifying. "But I'm the jilted girl who's still standing, who'll still be standing tomorrow, and next year, and decades from now. Can you say the same?" Rowena had no answer. She turned and fled, leaving only the echo of her footsteps. Seren watched her go without satisfaction, without triumph, only a quiet recognition that some battles, once won, left nothing but exhaustion in their wake. That evening, Seren found Castian in his study. But for once, the maps were put away. The correspondence sat untouched. He stood at the window, watching the last light fade from the sky. "It's done," he said as she entered. "Blackmere will face justice. His allies have scattered. The council is stable. More stable than it's been since my father died. Because of you. Because of us." He turned to face her. "I couldn't have done this alone. I was so focused on maintaining control, on not showing weakness, that I couldn't see another way forward. You showed me. I just suggested a strategy. You executed it brilliantly. You did far more than that." He closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face. "You stood beside me when you could have run. You fought for me when you could have protected yourself. You believed in me when I'd almost stopped believing in myself. Castian, I love you." The words hung between them, simple and devastating, transforming everything that came before. "I know I'm not easy to love. I know this world is dangerous. I know I've asked impossible things of you since the moment we met." His voice roughened. "But I love you, Seren. Not because you're useful, or strong, or strategically valuable. Because you are you. Because you make me want to be present in my own life. Because every morning I wake up grateful that you took my hand in that dark garden." Tears pricked her eyes. "I love you too. Even knowing what I am, what this life demands, the dangers that will never fully disappear, because of what you are." She pulled him closer. "Because you're the man who saw me at my lowest and offered me a chance to rise. Because you've carried impossible burdens and never stopped trying to do right by the people depending on you. Because underneath all that control is someone who cares so deeply, he's terrified of showing it." He kissed her, deep and true and full of promise. When they parted, he reached into his pocket. "I have something for you." It was a ring, not the simple band from their hasty wedding, but something extraordinary. A sapphire the color of midnight sky, surrounded by diamonds that caught the light like scattered stars. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to her the day I was born." His voice was thick with emotion. He told her it was for moments of new beginning, when old worlds ended and new ones opened up. He slid it onto her finger. "You're my new beginning, Seren. Whatever comes next, we face it together." She kissed him again, tasting salt. His tears or hers, she couldn't tell. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except this moment, this man, this future they'd somehow carved out of chaos and desperation. The grand ballroom of Ashenmore was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Candles blazed in every chandelier, their light multiplied by mirrors and crystal until the entire room seemed to glow from within. Music swelled from an orchestra positioned in the gallery above. 500 guests filled the space, council members and nobles, allies who'd once doubted them, and enemies who'd learned the cost of opposition. And at the center of it all, the Duke and Duchess of Ashenmore danced. "Everyone's watching," Seren murmured, her sapphire ring catching the light as Castian spun her gracefully. "Let them watch until their eyes tire. I don't care. They're still wondering, you know, how a jilted nobody ended up here. They know the answer by now. They've watched you command council meetings. They've seen you negotiate treaties and diffuse crises. They've learned that underestimating you is a mistake no one makes twice." She laughed softly. "Flatterer. Truth-teller. There's a difference." The music swelled toward its conclusion. Seren caught glimpses of the people who'd shaped their story. Lysara dancing with a young lord who looked both terrified and enchanted. The dowager holding court in a corner, still formidable, but with something softer in her eyes when her gaze found her grandson and his wife. Lady Vespera watching everyone with eternal vigilance, but offering a small nod of approval when she caught Seren looking. Niall was here too, her brother, transformed by a year of legitimate work into someone their father barely recognized. He stood near the refreshment table, laughing at something her mother had said, looking genuinely happy for perhaps the first time since childhood. Her parents had traveled from their modest home, debts cleared, stability restored, pride slowly healing. Her father had shaken Castian's hand and said simply, "Thank you for seeing what I always knew was there." Even the ghost of Aldous Vernier seemed far away now, a small humiliation that had led to an extraordinary life. She'd heard he and Venetia were miserable, their marriage one of convenience that had soured into mutual contempt. She couldn't bring herself to feel satisfaction, only gratitude that his betrayal had pushed her towards something better. "Do you ever wonder?" Castian asked as the dance concluded. "Wonder what?" "What would have happened if I hadn't asked you to dance that night? If you'd refused? If you'd stayed safe instead of stepping into the unknown?" Seren considered. "I would have survived, found some modest position, lived some quiet life, watched my family struggle, and blamed myself for not doing more." She met his eyes. "But I wouldn't have lived. Not really. Not like this. No regrets? Only one." His brow furrowed. "What?" "That we wasted 2 weeks with a locked door between us." She smiled. "I could have kissed you much sooner." He laughed, that rare, genuine laugh she'd grown to treasure, and kissed her right there, in front of 500 watching guests. The whispers would fly tomorrow. The gossip would spread. The proper matrons would clutch their pearls and declare it scandalous. Seren didn't care, because she was exactly where she belonged, in the arms of a man who ruled half an empire and loved her completely, in a world she'd never imagined entering, much less conquering, in a life that had started with public humiliation and led to private joy. Later that night, alone in their chambers, Castian handed her a letter that had arrived that morning. "It's from your mother," he said. Serene opened it, reading aloud. "My dearest daughter, watching you tonight reminded me of something my mother once told me. She said that the hardest storms grow the strongest trees. I didn't understand then. I do now. You are the strongest tree in any forest, my darling, and I am so proud of the woman you've become. Not because of the title, or the gowns, or the grand house. Because you never stopped being you. Kind, brave, fierce, true. Even when the world tried to convince you that being you wasn't enough, it was always enough. You were always enough. All my love, forever and always, Mother." Seren's eyes filled with tears. Castian pulled her close, holding her as she cried, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming fullness of a heart that had learned, against all odds, to hope again. "She's right, you know," he murmured against her hair. "About what?" "You were always enough. From the first moment I saw you standing in that ballroom, refusing to crumble, I knew. I just didn't have words for it yet." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "What words do you have for it now?" He smiled, open and unguarded, all his walls finally down. "I have. I love you. I have. I'm grateful. I have. I can't imagine my life without you, and I don't want to try." He kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then her lips. "I have. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Always." "Always," she agreed. Outside, snow began to fall, the first of the season, blanketing Ashen Moor in white. Inside, wrapped in warmth and love and the certainty of belonging, the Duke and Duchess of Ashenmore began their forever. Some stories start with fairy tale meetings, princes and princesses who recognize each other immediately, who fall in love at first sight, who never doubt the path they're on. Theirs started with betrayal, desperation, and a bargain made at midnight in a dark garden. But the ending was the same. Happy, true, earned, and absolutely, impossibly, completely worth every step of the journey to get there.